Hello, I'm Michael Palin. I'm on the steps of the Reform Club in London, a place where my life quite literally changed. But from here I set out almost 26 years ago in 1988 to start a journey called Around the World in 80 Days, which started a whole new career for me as a television traveller. My new journey is also the start of my new volume of diaries. Travelling to Work, I've called them for obvious reasons, and they start with my view of what it was like to make Around the World in 80 days. Not necessarily what you see on television, all the glossy countries, the lovely places, crossing the Pacific, parties in Hong Kong, but the doubts and the anxieties, the worries I felt when I was actually making the programme. Could I do this sort of thing? All the problems that occurred are there in the diaries, including one of the main ones was that when we returned victorious and triumphant in less than 80 days, 79 days and 7 hours, we got back to the Reform Club in London and they wouldn't let us in. It's all there. But maybe it was because I didn't have a tie. Maybe we were rather smelly after 79 days and 7 hours going around the world. But whatever it is, I've got a tie now, I've got a jacket, and I'm hoping I will be let in this time to tell you a little bit more about Travelling to Work, Diaries, Volume 3. Well, Travelling to Work, as the name suggests, is really about my travels. A total change in my life that began 26 years ago, as I've said. And yet, in the diaries, I show that it wasn't a foregone conclusion to do these travels. It wasn't just one seamless thing after another. All sorts of debates, discussions, trying to sell it to the BBC, making changes here and there, lots of problems, lots of anxieties. Scattered through the diaries, really, is the backstory of how the travels were made, not the travels themselves. And the amazing thing is that my diaries are really set on either side of my 50th birthday, 1993. And for some reason, I got a great surge of energy then and wanted to do everything I'd never done before. So it's the diary of somebody who wants to do something completely different. Where have I heard that before? So I come back from Around the World in 80 Days and go into the longest and most serious bit of acting I've ever done, which was GBH, a 10-part series of Alan Bleasdale's story of politics up in the north, which I played Jim Nelson, the schoolmaster. And that, I'd never done anything as long or as committed as that. I think it was 10 long parts. And then immediately after that, alongside that, I was making a film in which I'd written and which I was also starring in as my great-grandfather, because I discovered some wonderful stories about my great-grandfather and how he married, he was an Oxford Don, married an Irish orphan, and their relationship together and how the marriage worked out all those years ago is the basis of the film American Friends. And then off I went, North Pole to South Pole, as one does in between. And I came back and suddenly I was offered the chance of a West End play, and I'd written a play called The Weekend. And the diaries recount the whole experience of getting a play together for the West End. Very exciting, very glamorous, and how you deal with a critical panning at the end of it. So there's all sorts of ups and downs. But I wasn't put off. I'd done a play. How about a novel? I'd always wanted to write a novel. And again, in the diary, we go into the birth of a novel, which was not easy. In fact, my novel, which became Hemingway's Chair, was originally to be called Uganda. I went off to Uganda. It was all going to be set there. In the diaries, something that never happened to me on my travels, but when I was doing work for Uganda, I encountered an earthquake in Central Africa, the southern part of Uganda, in the area near the big silverback gorilla camp where we go and see gorillas, and I recount this. And the earthquake struck in the middle of the night. It's quite a strong earthquake. And for some reason I woke up and I thought it was the gorillas coming to shake the little huts where we were, to get their revenge. You're staring at us, we're going to stare at you. Anyway, that's all in the diary. I've never really talked about that much before. But out of that came Hemingway's Chair, which was successful enough as a first novel to get me to write another novel a couple of years ago, The Truth. Then Fierce Creatures, the follow-up to A Fish Called Wanda. Who knows much about that? Who knows the fact that it was filmed almost twice? We filmed it all in 1995, mostly at a zoo, which we specially built at Pinewood Studios. But then there were some problems, and I was called back after I'd done Full Circle. This is like 10 months after I'd been around the Pacific, to say, could we do some reshoots? We want to do 10 minutes more at the end, just some reshoots. Things didn't quite work. In the end, 45 minutes of the film was reshot and stuck on the end there. So that was the birth of Fierce Creatures. And then all sorts of things happened after that. I began to work on a documentary about Ernest Hemingway. I did a series with Tracy Ullman, all things that really talked about before. And the most wonderful thing in the Diaries is my film with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan called You've Got Mail. Unfortunately, my part was deemed surplus to requirements, and I was cruelly called by Basil Powell, my photographer, You've Got Cut. Anyway, that's all in the diary, and the diary ends, extraordinarily enough, with the Pythons. The Pythons at Aspen, Colorado, receiving an award, and what are we discussing? A reunion. What is our decision? As it is in the Diaries in 1998, no, we're not going to do it. So there we are. The Diaries remind you how things can change. So travelling to work, travelling is the main thing, but work is all sorts of different things. And I think the only consistent thing there is that me, a kind of very stable character, and I'm still with the same wife at the beginning of the Diaries and at the end, still my 3 children going through university, doing the most extraordinary things to destabilise my life, going off to places I'd never been to before, taking on things I'd never done before. It's a real seesaw ride, and I just can't believe I did quite as much, and I never will again. So it's all there in Travelling to Work, Diaries Volume 3.